Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Flee Red States podcast brought to you by Texas Pride Realty Group, brokered by Home Smart Stars. Today we have Shasta Townsend with us. We are talking all things Mexico. And we can start with the Gulf of Mexico, or we can go into anywhere we want to. Shasta, welcome to the podcast.
Gracias. Thank you for having me. So awesome. I love what you guys are doing.
So tell us about Mexico from an LGBTQ perspective, if you can.
Sure.
What is it like to be who we are there? And tell us about maybe some of the places where community is gathered.
Sure. I often say to people that I feel like Mexico is like gaytopia, in the sense that, it's really interesting because Mexico is a very Catholic country and it has a lot of like machismo energy still, but it really is at sort of what I would say the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what we see going on in the US, especially in red states. So, what we have happening at a political level, and then I'll talk about sort of like the everyday people, is that there are a lot of laws being passed to actually protect gay rights, trans rights, women's rights, reproductive rights. So, Mexico is actually going the other way. I love her. I have a girl crush on the president here. Her name's Claudia
Me
Sheinbaum.
too.
I know. She just like I follow her on Instagram and she was in our city. I lived just outside Puerto Vallarta recently, and I said to my husband, let's go and find her. And he's like, no, babe, you can't chase down the president of Mexico with your girl crush. But I love her because not only has she responded to President Trump in a way that is both, just divine feminine leadership. She is playing chess and he is playing checkers, but she has maintained an open arm sort of I don't know, ideology for all Americans, but certainly in LGBTQ. And so it's very interesting because as we see things, in the US and other parts of the world sort of swinging very far right and with this insane BS happening, here in Mexico, I get emotional about it because it's almost like it's swinging the other way. Here in Puerto Vallarta, we have one of the world's biggest gay pride celebrations. Literally last week, Puerto Vallarta just signed a sister city agreement with New York City to be one of the top LGBTQ cities in the world. We are one of the top gay travel destinations worldwide. And for those of you that are listening, I'll talk about other places also, but Puerto Vallarta, we have a huge area called the Romantic Zone, but it's not like a gay ghetto. It's not like, oh, I can only go to the Romantic Zone and it's the only place I'll be welcome or safe. I live just north of Puerto Vallarta in a town called Bucerias. If you want a sort of more laid back beach experience, this is a great place to be. And about 95% of my clients that I work with in terms of relocation and real estate are LGBTQ, and many of them are choosing Bucerias. So I think it's good to know that from a political perspective, really Mexico is on the other end of the perspective. Then when we talk about sort of day-to-day people, right? I have friends that are Canadian, American, European, and Mexican, and there is no tension that I see. There's no hatred. And in fact, in this area, and I would think most of Mexico, and I'll talk about other cities, it is not tolerated. Like we do not tolerate that shenanigans down here. And people are like, it's almost like a non-issue. So I had a lesbian couple come down to do some scouting with me, and they were like, oh, is it okay if we hold hands? Because back where we live, we don't even tell people we're married. We don't tell anybody that we're actually like together in a relationship. And I was like, hold hands, make out, like it's fine. It is not an issue. And then they were sharing with me that then when they checked into their hotel, the concierge said, will you and your wife need extra hotel cards? And that woman said to me, it's the first time that anyone has actually acknowledged my partner as my wife. And to me, it's a bit heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's something to celebrate. So Mexico, if you're considering where should I go from an LGBT welcome space, but also protective space, it is very much so. So we've talked about Puerto Vallarta, north of Puerto Vallarta, Bucerias. Other really great places to consider Guadalajara, which is about right now 2.5 hours from me down the toll road. It's the third largest city in Mexico. It's actually a very cool city. And it is, they are calling it the new San Francisco. I mean, that's how many expats, digital nomads are moving into Guadalajara. It's more for those of you that are like, I want city, I want nightlife, I want concerts, I want big bars, all of those type of things. Mexico City is an amazing city. I'd live there too. I love Mexico City.
My
I
favorite city in Mexico is Mexico City. I love it.
Okay. Oh gosh, it's just a fabulous city. There is certainly a gay area there called the Rose area, but also in Mexico City, again, it's the same thing as Puerto Vallarta. Like you're just welcome, you find your area. And even when we start to get off the beaten track, there's just there's not the issues. There's not something where, oh my gosh, I have to be scared. I can't tell people I'm gay, lesbian, or trans. I can't mention this. It's not my perception in Mexico. And then the last thing that I want to say about Mexico, very much like Indigenous culture in Canada and the US, is Mexico Indigenous culture, which is still very much alive in Mexico, had a tradition of two-spirit people and really saw,
Nice.
two-spirit meaning either gay, lesbian, or trans. And then trans actually is a huge tradition also in Mexico. So there's a sort of interesting, and my background is I'm Indigenous Canadian, so I have Cree ancestry. And so from an Indigenous perspective, Mexico also has that same perspective. And then there's a long line of sort of like trans culture in Mexico. And here in Bucerias, I mean, this is not a huge city. You see trans people everywhere. Trans people are welcome, safe. I have many trans clients moving here as well. So that's kind of the 100-foot view. I hope that was a long answer, but I think it's an important, to give people all those details.
So I want to go back to, about feeling safe, talk about holding someone's hand. So like the first time I went to Mexico City, I went to visit someone who's there I stayed in my own hotels, and I went by myself. I don't speak Spanish because I was stupid and dropped it in high school. I walked around with my Google Translate. I met people. I have an abuela there that I met her at a bakery. She helped translate at the bakery, and then she invited me back to her place. And stupid little American boy follows this old Mexican woman back to her place, and she gave me baked me had a piece of, I think it's pumpkin loaf or something like that, and asked me what I like, and I said, "Oh, I really love banana nut bread." She said, "Come back tomorrow," and I did. And she had me banana nut bread. Now, keep in mind, I don't have a phone number for her. I don't have an email address for her. But when I go back, I find her and we'll take her to breakfast, something like that, and she bakes me bread of some kind because she knows that's what I like. But when I say the only time I felt unsafe in Mexico City was my first day there, and I went for a walk. I have GPS on my phone. I'm good, no big deal. And as I'm coming up, it's probably good, maybe an hour long, and I come up the other side of my hotel, and I see the armored cars and trucks and the guns, and I'm like, head down, look forward. And my friend called me and said, "Hey, I'm getting off work. I'll be over there in a minute." And I said, "Wait, what is this?" He's like, "Leslie, you're staying next door to the U.S. Embassy. You're fine." Like I was like, "Oh, okay, this makes sense now." But I had no problem getting in and out of the airport. Everywhere I went, I did make the attempt to try. I used Google Translate. I went out of my way to make sure I tried, but I felt very welcomed anywhere I went. I never had any issue with people trying to work with me in translation. I honestly, and it's a beautiful city. It is so and by the way, in America, I feel like the image that most Americans have of Mexico in general is a desert, a dust bowl. It's green, it's beautiful, it's lush. I honestly one it's one of my favorite cities in the world to go to, and I fell in love the first time, and I love going back all the time.
That's awesome. I mean, I think it's like anywhere we travel in the world. If you're looking for trouble, you'll find trouble. But the perception, I think, especially in the US about Mexico, I mean, there's this sort of propaganda that we've been fed about Mexico, and everywhere you go, you're going to get kidnapped, and like people are just waiting to like rob you and rape you. And, and of course, there's areas of Mexico that you want to be safe and be wary. And we're not going to go there. Like none of us are going to go to those areas of Mexico. But any of the other areas like Mexico City, Puerto Vallarta, San Miguel de Allende, Guadalajara, other places, they're very welcoming. People are very welcoming. The crime rates, and anyone can Google this, by the way. Statista is one of them. Numbeo is another site where you can actually look at crime rates. And the crime rates in US and Canada compared to Mexico are like 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 10 times the crime rates in Mexico. So the sort of propaganda that we've been served up is absolutely false. It's feeding a certain agenda, as we all know. Of course, you need to be mindful and smart travelers or expats or whatever you're doing, digital nomads. But as you just said, Leslie, and it's been my experience also in Mexico. And I think you make a good point too. There was just recently some demonstrations in Mexico City. A lot of those many people believe were actually instigated by Chinese spy agents. It was a very small number of people that were demonstrating in Mexico City. We do not see any anti-American stuff here in Puerto Vallarta. And overall in Mexico City, I don't see it either. But you make a good point in that I think we want to be good travelers. We want to be good expats. We want to try to be friendly. We want to try not to be judgmental. We want to try to learn a couple words in Spanish, right? And even if you're like flummoxing your way through, they'll be so appreciative. And just kind of going through your travel or your move to Mexico with both discernment but also an open heart, which is what I think you also spoke to, Leslie. Really letting yourself be seen and received and loved, because you will be.
And by the way, it's an international city. And my favorite Japanese restaurant is in Mexico City. So when I say, my experience, and I speak on Mexico City because I've been to like Cozumel, I've been to the resorts type of thing. And going to Mexico City is what I felt like is my first trip to Mexico and actually experiencing it. And it is one of those places that there was nothing I expected. Like I was concerned about travel, and all these people warning me about getting kidnapped and all these other things. And honestly, I felt much safer in Mexico City than I did, say, in many parts of Dallas and Houston, where I've lived a lot. So, but I will say, everyone went out of their way to make an effort to make sure I felt welcome. And again, it's a beautiful city full of history that people just haven't heard about here. And the story I love to tell is that when I go to Mexico City, on Sundays, they close down 12 miles of road, and you can rollerblade, you can ride your bike. And me and my friend, we ride bikes, and we take that 12-mile bike ride. It's great. But at the roundabouts, when they have to let the traffic through, they stop you, and someone gives you a history lesson about that statue. Now, they gave it in Spanish, so I didn't understand, but my friend translated it. But I thought that was amazing that someone was there to educate me. And I don't know I guess, tax dollars are paying for that, but I got a free education out of that. I had to rent a bike, and that was it. So I loved it. And I would say, when I looked around, as far as going to, say, some of the gay bars and restaurants, things like that, you could say there's an area, but it was kind of scattered about.
Mhm.
And I did not feel unsafe at 2 in the morning walking from one to the other. Like, I felt perfectly comfortable with it. And so the whole safety thing, I think, is something that we've been fed, and not necessarily the experience that people are going to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I welcome Kimber to the podcast. Kimber is one of our folks here too. So hi, Kimber. Thank you for joining us. Can we talk for a minute about the types of visas that are available? I run the LGBTQ World Map site, and I
Mhm.
track where there are golden visas, retirement visas, digital nomad visas, student visas. What would get us in? And I know that if you are an American, you can get a temporary residence card and then a permanent resident card. Can you walk us through those steps as you know them?
Sure, absolutely. So right off the bat, if you weren't getting residency, which I will talk to in a second, but many people don't know that you can come into Mexico on a tourist visa that generally they give you 180 days, so 6 months. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I need to get the heck out of Dodge, you know, you can come to Mexico and they will pretty much everywhere give you a 180-day visa. So that at least gives you peace of mind that if you need an exit plan, this is a great place to come to. However, I would recommend if you're seriously considering, you know, spending some time relocating to Mexico, that you do get residency. Mexico does not have digital nomad visas, and they do not have golden passports or golden visas. They have two visas, as you just mentioned, Bob. One is temporary residency. Temporary residency is basically for anyone under the age of 60, and it is based on your financials. So Mexico recently significantly raised the minimum wage in this country, which is still shockingly low. It's about 300 pesos a day for a 12-hour day. That's 15 US dollars. So when people complain about the financials, the truth is, friends, they're trying to raise the poverty line in this country. So the financials are based on the minimum wage times so many days. So right now, the financial requirement to get temporary residency is about 4,000 US dollars a month in income, or to have about $68,000 in a 401k or savings account of some kind. That is pretty much what temporary residency, what they're looking for, that you're under the age of 60 and that you have these financial requirements. The other way to get a temporary residency visa is to purchase real estate. This is a new development in Mexico. They've only instituted it literally this year. And the threshold's actually pretty low. So if you have, I think it's about 200,000 US that you put into a purchase in Mexico. And yes, you can buy real estate in Mexico as an American citizen. You do not need residency to purchase real estate. So if you're like, I'm getting out, I'm liquidating assets in the US and I want to buy in Mexico and I want residency, that is another path. Now, a permanent residency, what's the difference? Permanent residency philosophically is a retiree visa. It's like you're 60, you're moving here. You can come and go, by the way, on either of those visas. You do not have to remain in the country for a certain number of months, unlike other countries around the world. So, but how with the permanent residency, they've just changed this now that you have to be at least 60, because philosophically you're moving to Mexico, you're retiring to Mexico. It does not expire, you have it in perpetuity. With the temporary visas, you can get 1, 3, or 4 years. After having a temporary for 4 years, you can then apply for permanent. Permanent, what they're looking for is the income thresholds, or the retirement income thresholds are higher. So they do like to see retirement income around 7,000 US a month. And they like to see about 150,000, if it's depending on the consulate, sometimes it ranges up to 170,000 in savings or 401k type of thing. They want to know, Mexico wants to know that you can come here and basically take care of yourself and sustain yourself. Now, the interesting thing is, the last thing I'll say about this is, once you have permanent residency, after 5 years of holding permanent residency, you can apply for Mexican citizenship. And you have to pass a test, which is both a culture test and a language test. And different people give me certain feedback. Some people say it's hard, some people say it's easy. Now, the cool thing about Mexico is Mexico has a relationship with Spain because they had 500 years of colonialism. And so once you have a Mexican passport, you can then apply for a Spanish passport. So there's certain ways that we can sort of leapfrog into. Me right now, I'm like, I like multiple passports. I want multiple residency. I want to know that I have escape plans anywhere I want to go. Not that I'm worried about Mexico at all. But that's the ways to really think about visas. And if you're listening and you want help with visas, it's something that my team and I do as well, as we help people obtain residency and visas for Mexico.
Can I back you up just a little bit? You talked about purchasing real estate, and for a lot of people that I had spoken to over the years, one of the reasons they were choosing Panama over Mexico is because Panama would allow you to get a mortgage. I understand that this year Mexico is now allowing people to American citizens to buy homes there and get a mortgage.
You're correct. Yes.
And
There
that
is.
is changing people that literally is making people's decisions change. Like, because Panama made it very easy for them. They're like, but I like Mexico, and now I can afford, because not people can't afford to pay cash for a home, but now that they can get a mortgage, it makes a big difference in how they choose.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been probably just over 2 years, maybe 3 years, that we actually have a variety of different lending institutions that are will offer mortgages to foreigners, as they call us. And that is actually shifting to become easier and easier. And they used to never give you a mortgage on a pre-sale, something being built. And now there's a new organization that will actually give you mortgages on pre-sale, because you can get a lot of value in pre-sale. So you're absolutely right. Yes, things have shifted here. And Mexico also does have very strong banking laws, right? Opening a bank account in Mexico is no small feat. It takes about 3 hours, and you feel like you're signing away your life, because they're very strict, because they have very strong anti-money laundering laws. And just recently they've come on, a couple of the banks here in Mexico have also come under scrutiny through the Mexican government and the US government. So banking laws are even getting stronger in Mexico. So if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, is it safe to put money in Mexico? Is it safe to open bank accounts? It is. The banking laws are actually almost stronger in Mexico than they are in the US. Canada, where I come from, we have very strong banking laws as well, but Mexico making it easier to get a mortgage, but they're also protecting your money. They really want foreign investment. It's one of the big drivers that President Sheinbaum has to make Mexico even more attractive to foreign investment.
So can you tell us a little bit about, because one of the other big questions we often get is healthcare. That,
Sure.
that is a huge question, especially for people like me at my very advanced age. I'm very concerned about healthcare. So tell us about, I guess, what's required and what are the opportunities for healthcare there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get it all the time too. So before I moved to Mexico, I called a friend of mine that was living in Playa del Carmen. And I was like, what's it really like, right? Because back in the day, I've been in Mexico now for 4 years. There was really nobody doing relocation back then like I do now. So I called a friend of mine that had been living there. And she was like, I literally have a doctor's phone number on my cell phone. And to me, this was like mind blowing. I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, yeah, and he will message me and check in on me. And I was like, I said, you're making this stuff up. There's no way that a doctor is going to give you his personal cell phone number and check in on you. Like, what the heck are you talking about? And she also said, oh, it's so affordable and it's amazing care. Fast forward, I moved to Mexico, and Puerto Vallarta, where I live, is one of the world's top like medical tourism, from anything from facelifts to, oncology to stem cell treatments to everything. I mean, we have some of the top doctors in the world here in Puerto Vallarta, and all over Mexico. The doctors are amazing. There's also amazing holistic care, which is something that I'm a huge fan of. I do like IV therapy, and in Canada, I was paying about $500 in IV therapy. And down here, it's about 70 US. Like, it's just the price, and the people are so lovely. And I have clients that come all the time that ask me for everything from oncology, neurology, HIV, trans medicine support, everything. And there is a specialist or someone here who can help you. Not only will they help you, they're so caring. They're so nice. I went for a physical just recently with a new doctor, female doctor. I was with her for 90 minutes. I've never been in a room with a doctor for 90 minutes. I mean, and I was talking to her about, I just turned 51, I have concerns about aging, blah, blah, blah. And so she like made me this cream, like it's just, they're over the top, right? They're like so lovely, so nice. Now that physical, which was 90 minutes of a doctor's time, I paid 500 pesos for. That's about 25 US dollars. I don't even know how they stay in business. And this is one of the top medical clinics in PV called San Mare. Amazing doctors. So I personally have never paid for a high package of medical insurance, because the pay as you go, even with some of the top doctors and top specialists, to me is quite affordable. You can absolutely get a variety of different medical insurance packages. just this year, I paid for what's called catastrophic, like if I had a car accident or some crazy thing happened unexpectedly, I have full coverage. Even that for myself and my husband for a full year was $1,000 US. And there's no deductible. Otherwise, when I go see a doctor for whatever it might be, I just pay, pay as I go type of thing. And they do give you I just want to close my story. They do give you their WhatsApp number and they do call you and they do follow up. I mean, it is crazy to me. The vets also, let's talk about vets super fast. There's a ton of vets. They're super affordable. They also follow up. I just adopted a new kitten. She had a leg issue. I took her into a vet. The whole thing with x-rays, pain medication came to 600 pesos, which is about 30 US. And the vet actually called me 2 days later and said, how is she doing? Do you need anything? Can we help you in any way? I mean, it's just, to me, it's like mind blowing. Not only the level of care, the affordability, and how kind people are.
You and hi, I'm Kimber. So great to meet you and happy to be here. Um, so I want to, something that you had kind of touched on that I want to go back to is what, from your experience, or maybe through someone you know's experience that's moved there, what does the transgender healthcare look like? Is it, I know already Mexico is extremely LGBTQ friendly, and has had protections for a very long time. But what does that translate whenever it comes to the transgender community?
In terms of your first question was healthcare. Is
Yes,
that,
thank
yeah.
you.
So here in Puerto Vallarta and also cities like Mexico City, Guadalajara, some of the bigger cities are definitely going to have specialists and access to trans medicine. And it's not in healthcare. It's like a non-issue. Okay. So I had a client just recently come into Puerto Vallarta. He's a trans man. I introduced him personally to my family doctor. And it was, and I'm translating in Spanish, which was an interesting conversation to try to translate in Spanish. I was like, because my Spanish is Spanglishy still, right? And she just was like, there's no issue. I can help you. If there's anything that you need that I can't, that's out of my scope, we will find a specialist. So there's, in what I see, and because I do have clients, there's no stigma, there's no issues, there's access to things, there's no denial of things. It's the same also type of price points, right? You're going to access to things that are so affordable. I have another client coming in that's actually HIV positive. I know it's not your question, but I just want to pop this in also. His medication in the US is something like 1,800 US a month. That same medication here in Mexico is 80. Okay. That's extortion. This is not okay what's going on.
By
And
the
so
way, that was 1800 was probably his copay, not the
it is
actual
okay.
cost. Yeah, that was
It
his
is.
actual copay. That it's probably more like $8,000 without it in his.
Yeah, exactly. And with the cuts that are going on, one of the issues is the copay is actually being cut. So if you're also listening, and you have any concern about access to, as you just said, Kimber, trans healthcare, HIV care, oncology, anti-aging, whatever it is, it's very affordable and accessible, certainly here in Mexico. And I think just before you popped on, Kimber, I was also talking about the trans community here in Mexico and in Puerto Vallarta in particular. And it's very robust. And Mexico is actually making strides to protect trans rights. And in the way that the US is going to, extreme far right fascist ideals, Mexico is going the other way. It has always been a country with an ideology of acceptance and openness, but I think it's one of the few countries I see in the world that's actually like taking a stand, saying, no, we actually won't tolerate this. We want to have things, literally laws being made and laws being changed. And also there's the social aspect also, which I talked about a little bit earlier, where here in Puerto Vallarta, Bucerias, where I live, it's like it's a non-issue in terms of it being an issue. As I said, I have a client who's trans and he asked me, will I have any issues as a trans man? And I said, not that I see, and he hasn't. There's been zero issues in that area. So you know, safety, healthcare, emotional support, people welcoming you. It really is. Of course, are there jerks around? Yes, of course there are. There's going to be, you know, there's some red hat wearing people here and there. But generally, again, we just, it's the tone in this area, and really what I see all of Mexico is there's not a tolerance for intolerance. It's not tolerated here. And it's just kind of like cheesy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, seriously, like, and Mexican nationals also are that way. Of course, there's conservative Mexican nationals, but it's a like, we're not going there. This is not cool at all.
That's really relieving to hear. Thank you for sharing that because, um, Mexico has, and Mexican cultures, indigenous cultures have oftentimes have deep roots in third gender or whatever that looks like. And so just really seeing that, no, that does exist there. There is a place where transgender people can actually just be treated like people.
Exactly.
So the other thing, because you were just talking about all my favorite things, okay? Pets. What does it
Mhm.
look like? I've got 14 chickens, 2 dogs, and 2 cats. How can I bring them all to Mexico?
So chickens, no, you cannot cross borders with poultry. Sorry, my dear. You just, it's unfortunate, but the laws around livestock, right? I mean, I know you don't see them as livestock, but they will see it as livestock, right? So it would take a lot of hoops, let's put it that way, to bring your chickens down to Mexico. But like cats and dogs, no problem. Mexico, basically everybody has cats and dogs. It's a very dog-friendly culture. Dogs are literally everywhere all the time. Um, if you are flying in country, you have to obviously check your airline and make sure, you know, how many animals can you have with you, because a lot of them only want you to bring one. So then you have to sort all that stuff out. But you also, and I can send this link to you. There's a link that I share often with my clients. It tells you exactly what you need to do. The gist of it, friends, is if you're bringing in cats or dogs, you need to have up-to-date rabies shots, like within 10 days of when you either fly or drive into the country. You'll need a letter from your vet that says this animal is in good health and there's no concern. The other thing that's happening recently is what's called screwworm, particularly in dogs. So now, usually when you go either way, Mexico, US to Mexico, you have to show some sort of, you know, screwworm vaccination. But it's actually pretty simple. When I was moving down here, I brought my cat from Canada into Mexico. And I did all the things. They do stop you. You do have to go to like zoology and they will inspect your animals. They're very friendly. They're very lovely. They just kind of look at your paperwork. They look at your animal, and about 5 minutes later, you're gone. If you're driving into Mexico, which is possible, it's easier, obviously, to bring more pets. And I actually have a safe passage service where we drive you and your vehicle and your pets through Mexico to wherever you're going. And that some people elect to do that because, like you said, Kimber, you know, you have animals that you want to bring in, your fur babies, and it may not be viable to fly, you know, that number of animals with you. So you can do it that way. When you drive in, you want to have all the same things ready, but they generally don't stop you. They don't generally check your paperwork, but they can. They are definitely in their rights to do that. So, you know, it's just sort of it's not super hard. Your animals won't be quarantined. It's not like taking them to Europe, right? Mexico is welcoming. They just want to see your paperwork. They want to see that you have up-to-date shots and that you have a letter from the vet.
I love that because absolutely in Europe, there's sometimes where it's 6 months in quarantine, or it could be even longer if something happens and you didn't do the right steps before leaving.
Right.
But I really love the idea visually of me being in like a single plane with all of my chickens, and the dogs and the
Me
cats,
too.
where they're just all flying. Where they're helping me get off the ground. Okay,
That's
so
awesome.
thank you.
We'll know that your chickens can come home to roost on this one, but we'll see. We'll see. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. This is so informative. And I think it's great to get a perspective of somebody who's on the ground and understands it, because unless you've been to a country, you don't know the country. You know, growing up, I had never been to New York City. All I know is there was a lot of dancing and a trial at the end because I watched West Side Story and Law and Order. I mean, honest to God, everybody dances and then there's a trial, and that's all I knew of New York City. And now I know that's actually pretty accurate. But anyway, thank you for being here. I appreciate it so much. How would somebody reach you?
So the easiest is to actually just go to my website, which is my name, shastatownsend.com. I'm also on Instagram under the same handle, and then on Facebook. And, you know, I have tons of free content also on my website, how to move here. I have an LGBTQ plus guide also to Puerto Vallarta and area. And, you know, I'm here to help. And I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for all you guys are doing. It's very
We
important.
may have you come back in about 6 months and talk again, if that's okay.
That'd be awesome. Love it.
Thanks. Thanks so much.